Giving everyone a minute to join. Okay, I think that's us. I think we're good to kick off. So welcome everybody to our first Copilot Lunch and Learn of 2024. Thank you very much for joining us this Friday. I'd like to start off by welcoming those of you who already know us. Thank you very much again for joining us. And hello, we'll look forward to speaking to you after the session. For those of you who don't, it's maybe worthwhile covering off a bit about who we are at Ingentive and what we can potentially do for you. So we are a leading Microsoft digital transformation business. As you can see, although we're here today talking about Copilot, we actually span the breadth of Microsoft services from modern work to cloud platforms, security, data and AI, and of course, digital app and innovation. What's really exciting for us, as the name probably suggests from this event, is that we are one of the UK launch partners for Copilot. And we don't say that tokenistically. In-house, we also have our own AI practice as well, so we can really take what you're doing in your business up to the next level. So we don't only have an hour. I'm going to kick off then by telling you just a bit about what we're going to speak about in the next hour. So I think it's fair to say that if anybody can cast their mind back to when Teams was first launching, and I spoke to so many customers at that time who would say to me, you know, Natalie, we've got a 12 to 18 month roadmap for this, so we're going to take our time. We've got this strategy worked out. And what happened was the pandemic hit and everybody phoned and said, press that big red button. We need to get moving with Teams immediately. And of course, many organisations, because of the need and necessity, had to push out Teams as quickly as possible. Lesson learned on that is that there was no strategy in place. And actually, a lot of businesses made a lot of money from the remediation that had to then follow. Now, the reason I tell you that is because we are helping you to make the right decision when it comes to your Copilot technology that you're going to implement in your business. So I'm joined, as you can see, by some of my other teammates today. We have Andy Lambert, Tom Hind, and Matt Harding on the call with me. I think, you know, we're going to cover off the strategy piece, and I think it's really important that we cover that off as part of your overall reasons to go down the route of Copilot. Effectively, when you put your strategy in place, you want your most senior stakeholders in the business to be sure that Copilot technology is, one, going to deliver on its ROI, and two, going to give you those productivity gains and efficiencies that you're really looking for throughout the business. So to get that, what we really need is some winning use cases in there. And Matt's actually going to take you through some of those use cases today. One of the questions I get asked most often is, what would be my killer use case? What would be the use case that would give me my ROI? And I'm not really sure that's the best way of looking at it, because Copilot is effectively the sum of its parts. So for example, we worked recently with a large media and telecoms client, and that client had a small use case. It was essentially a search functionality within their business where they were able to go through their millions of assets, but using Copilot, find them much more quickly. Now, in that particular use case, we may just have saved 3 minutes of everybody's time, but you multiply those 3 minutes by the thousands of users that adopt that technology, and that time soon adds up. And it's been proven recently, actually, that in some personas within a business, you can use as little as 35 minutes of productivity gains. And within that time, you've justified your Copilot licensing for the month. So the strategy piece is really important to make sure that you know why you're using it in the business and how it's actually going to affect the impact in the organisation. The other thing to bear in mind is governance. And again, for any CIOs, CTOs, it's super important that you know that the guardrails are in place to use this technology efficiently. And that's where Tom's going to head up the security piece and talk you through some of that. The other piece that's really important as well is the adoption of this technology. You really want to build up the community, and that's a whole different way of working. It's no longer enough just to say, let's onboard Copilot. There's a whole new way of thinking about it. So for example, instead of searching, we're now thinking about prompting. How do we get people to utilize that? Because in order to invest in Microsoft, in order to maximize your Microsoft investment, you really want to make sure that you've got that adoption in place. So we'll cover those 3 strands. We'll let you know as much as we can in the next hour, and we'll hand over to Andy next, and we'll finish up at the end by telling you some next steps and how you can potentially implement these into your own organisation. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks very much, Nat. Let me get the right screen. Hopefully everybody can see that. Hi, I'm Andy Lambert. I'm the modern work lead here at Ingentive. I've been working with Microsoft, delivering Microsoft-based solutions for clients since the late 1990s, which is why I look a bit old and a bit grey. Over the last 10 years, I've been helping clients move and exploit the Microsoft 365 platform, specifically around workloads like Teams, SharePoint, Exchange, and more recently Viva. What I'd like to do today is give you a quick overview on Copilot in Microsoft 365 apps, and then do a quick demo on how it works, what it looks like, and what it can do for you. So just a bit of background on Copilot and what Copilot is and the benefits it aims to bring to you. So Microsoft Copilot is the new AI-powered orchestration engine that is accessible from within any of the core Microsoft productivity apps like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Teams, etc. It utilizes what they call a large language model, LLMS, coupled with data from the Microsoft Graph running on your 365 tenant to respond to your questions. As Nat said, that's often referred to as a prompt. And you'll hear more about this end-to-end process later in the session. The key point to note about Copilot, it's not here to take over from you, but to help you in performing your daily activities. The aim of Copilot is to aid you to work more proficiently and to achieve quicker business outcomes through several means. If we look at it enhanced productivity, the whole idea of Copilot is to assist in the creation of cohesive documents, presentations, and spreadsheets, enabling you as users to get to the desired outcome quicker. On that basis, the time optimization looks at how Copilot can streamline and automate repetitive tasks and processes to, again, achieve quicker results. This whole time saving allows you as a user to focus on other higher value business work. Now, Copilot also provides excellent data analysis capabilities that enable you to extract insights from complex data sets. It identifies things like trends, anomalies, patterns, enabling you to make better informed and more accurate decisions. Just building on that, Copilot provides assistance in correcting things like tone, grammar, etc. in your documents, emails, and presentations. This helps reduce costly rework activities and helps maintain a professional quality output. And lastly, Copilot learns to adapt to each individual user, learning from previous interactions to refine and improve the responses over time. As it gets used, Copilot becomes more attuned to that user, their style, their tone, etc., to help personalize its responses. But what's this really mean in reality? Let's take an example from a marketing campaign for a new product. In that scenario, Copilot can be a useful asset in crafting compelling marketing material for that product. Here's some examples of how a marketing team might assist the marketing team. If we look at content generation, Copilot is there to help draft and write engaging product descriptions, highlight features, and create persuasive brochures, web articles, and social media posts. It can help in providing consistency and clarity, making the product messaging material more effective. Just building on that, the design and layout. Now, while Copilot doesn't directly design visuals, what it can do is suggest layouts, include graphics, and organize content effectively to create eye-catching posters, banners, digital ads, etc. From an email perspective, it can help draft those email campaign materials, including things like subject lines, body text, and call to action phrases to make those emails more engaging and relevant. On the social media side, Copilot can help draft, again, captivating social media posts for things like product information, promotions, and teasers. And it can also help tailor these for the target platform, whether that be Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. And lastly, from a marketing perspective, Copilot can help you compose press releases about that new product to ensure the messages getting delivered are clear, concise, and impactful. But there's a word of warning that comes with Copilot. It is a valuable asset and it's a valuable assistant to get people moving on that content creation. But it's essential for you to customize and review the content generated and to adjust the tone and the output to make it more humanized. But I'll quickly flip over to my demo and we can have a look at it in action. Okay. So I've opened just a blank Word document and I've entered a phrase in there, a prompt in there of how the automotive industry is innovating to help realize net zero. And if we click on the generate, what this is now doing is Copilot's now orchestrating the augmentation of content from either the on-prem tenant or, in this case, from the internet. So it's gone out to the internet, it's done a search, and it's starting to produce content within the Word document. And as you can see, although I could do this myself, ultimately it saved me all that time in going to the various sites and pulling the correct information into that Word document. And there we go. I've got 2 pages of material around what the automotive industry is doing, which is really useful. But we'll take that a step further. Look at the presentation. And what we're going to try and do is put another prompt in there. Now, I've got a document that I've already created on my OneDrive. So what I can do is ask Copilot to create a presentation from that Word document. Now, this Word document is based upon the automotive industry again. And what it will do is look at the document and create a number of slides from this. Hopefully it shouldn't take too long. There it is, it's trying to pull together the presentation. Nearly there. And what you'll see is it's not only taking the text out of and summarize the text out of the Word document, what it's also doing is adding in notes into the presentation and adding some graphics in there as well. What I'll also do is ask it to do something else. So we'll add another slide, a summary slide at the end. And there it is. So as you can see, I've got 13 slides quickly created via Copilot, and now I can go through and review that and change it and compose it into a more human, more personalized presentation. And on that note, what I'll do now is hand over to Tom.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andy. Right. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Hind. I'm the Azure and Security Lead at Ingentive, coming up to 8 or 9 years working in the cloud and IT space, all a bit of a blur. And at the moment, I have a core focus on the Azure platform and the Microsoft XDR stack as well, incorporating and integrating any vendor products into that. I have a specific focus on Microsoft 365 Copilot from a security point of view. I won't be talking too much today about Microsoft Copilot for security. That is a completely different conversation, although a very interesting and important one to have. What I want to talk about is how Copilot actually works in the background, not to an extremely low level, but just to give you an understanding of the architecture, how it is accessing content, what makes a prompt, and how Copilot is using your business information within Microsoft 365 as well. Now, you may have already seen in certain presentations or web content this diagram, and I really like this diagram because it gives you the all-up overview of what Microsoft 365 Copilot is doing. When a user enters a prompt, that prompt then has to be grounded. Large language models have an intensely large corpus of information that they have access to, but that information has to be cut off to a certain point. You might know this if you've used ChatGPT, with 2021, September 21, being the most up-to-date model for the OpenAI models anyway. Differences per model. So how do we make Copilot understand what it's accessing? That is through grounding or retrieval augmented generation. So when a user enters a prompt, and I'll show you an example of a prompt on the next slide, you'll also see prompts driven by Andy and Matt in the next section. Copilot then has to do some grounding, and grounding within a AI bot is it going out and getting content from other areas, be it an API call, business data, or using an index such as the semantic index to pull that data back. Then of course it constructs its response to you using the grounded content and the LLM corpus that it already knows and has access to. So Copilot's going out, it's getting your data, and it's going to get that data from Bing Chat Enterprise or Microsoft Bing, any plugins which you may have integrated with Microsoft 365 Copilot. Of course, we're still very new, so there's not that many plugins out there, although Microsoft Teams is a valid use case of that. It will go out to any other services, such as the Microsoft Graph. For example, Andy used Microsoft 365 Copilot within PowerPoint to pull information and summarize from a file and build a presentation. So it has to access and have access to the Microsoft 365 graph to do that. And Microsoft 365 Copilot is contextually aware of files, meetings, whether they're ongoing or finished or upcoming, and people within your organization. And that is strictly limited to the logical boundary of your Microsoft 365 tenant, as with every other service within Microsoft 365. At this stage, it's got your information back, and it is now sending that to the large language model to construct a response. It's worth noting that it's not actually sending data to the model, but it's using data to construct the grounded response to your prompt or query. In that case, it will then return the response from the large language model. It then processes this through the post-processing activities. And Microsoft 365 Copilot directly integrates with Microsoft Purview. So if you have data loss prevention, internal rules, if you have sensitivity labeling, encryption on files, anything along those lines at all, and retention rules within Purview, Copilot abides by those rules. So if a user is not allowed to see that content, or that content is encrypted and the user isn't in a group that has access to that content, the user will not be able to access it with Copilot returning a link to the file or a reference to that file in a larger summarization. All of that is powered through the graph and Copilot having access to the graph and knowledge of your tenant. And then it replies. So it will then fire the prompt into your Power Platform service, your Microsoft Word, or your Copilot in Teams or Copilot on the web or the mobile apps. And as I say, Microsoft Copilot in any flavor, be it Copilot for security, Microsoft 365 Copilot, Copilot for sales, all have access to the Azure OpenAI model, which is managed and maintained by Microsoft, but none of the data in terms of your business data is leaving the tenant. The RAI that you see on this diagram, as well as the responsible AI standards, that is Copilot checking for anything which it may not wish to display, although it's worth noting that no human review takes place on Microsoft 365 Copilot data or information which is sent to the service. So that's how a prompt travels through Microsoft 365 Copilot, making use of grounding, response augmented generation, and the large language model to augment how it is speaking and communicating with you. It's worth noting as well that within your tenant, Microsoft 365 Copilot will learn. So as more and more people are using the tool, it will effectively learn how best to respond to you, whether that's in a professional tone, using different semantic indexing to provide content that it thinks is going to be most relevant to you. So the more that you use Copilot, the more you are going to get value out of it. And that goes across all of the Microsoft 365 Copilot stack as well. A really good example of where response augmented generation is being used heavily is in Microsoft 365 Copilot for security, where that is making API calls to all of your semantic data across the security products that you have, be it Microsoft Sentinel, Purview, compliance data, and security data from the XDR stack as well. So let's look at what makes up a prompt, and then we'll talk a little bit about how that prompt is being structured from your data. This is a really neat example of a prompt. It's prompting with context. So generate a task list. That's the goal. We want Microsoft 365 Copilot to generate us a task list. So straight away, if you're in Microsoft Loop, it will generate you a Loop task list. If you're in Microsoft Word, it will generate you a bullet pointed task list. And that's the goal. So now we need to provide it with a source of information and some context. So generate me a task list to prepare me for a retrospective with the development team to discuss their UAT testing process. That's the context. I want Microsoft 365 Copilot to prepare me for my retrospective with the development team. So we're giving it information which is going to reference against the large language model to pull back content. It knows what a development team is through the large language model corpus. It knows what UAT testing is from this as well. It's not using our business data to find that or know about that. It already knows about what those things are. Focus on emails and Teams chat in the last week. We're now giving it a source of information to work from. Now, you don't have to give Microsoft 365 Copilot a source. It will scan the entire semantic index, depending on what you have access to pull that information back. But I just want to focus on emails and Teams chats. That's anything in my entire email inbox, archive, etc., or in my Teams chats and channel chats that I have. Please use professional but concise language. Now we're setting the expectation in the prompt. We're giving it the goal, the context, the source, and the expectation. Please use professional but concise language. Another really good example I like of setting an expectation is if you ask Microsoft 365 Copilot to create, say, a Microsoft Power Automate flow for renaming files in a directory. You can say, please use simplified language as though I was a beginner, or please use language which is technical, and it will abide by those expectations. I think a lot of people get caught in a trap of using really simple prompts with Microsoft 365 Copilot and asking questions. And you can have a conversation with Microsoft 365 Copilot as though you were asking questions. If you're a content creator or a power user, it's really best to start providing and thinking about what contextual, strong prompts you can provide. And yeah, don't be worried about thinking it's too much. As of yesterday, there is now the Microsoft 365 Copilot editor function where you can provide something like up to 18,000 characters or words as a prompt. And Copilot can handle that, search through it all, and access content. So let's take a little look about how Microsoft 365 Copilot is accessing your business data. It's the semantic index. So again, the query flow, a very simple query flow in this sense. And what we have when that grounding is happening and Microsoft 365 Copilot is reaching out to the graph, it is reaching out to Bing Chat Enterprise, it's reaching out to Bing, any web services, any plugins that you have enabled, and the semantic index. And the semantic index, if you've already used technologies like Syntax within SharePoint Online or SharePoint Online Premium, it's very, very similar. Copilot builds an index of your business data within your tenant, within the boundary of your tenant, using things like SharePoint files, lists, email data, OneDrive files, chat data, video, stream, anything it has access to within those areas and builds this semantic index. Now, it isn't storing data in that location in this index, it's building out references and grounding references to that data and where that information is stored, which means that when it is writing a response to you or querying your response back, it can give you references that you can click on and it will take you to that information. So when you prompt, like asking it for Teams chats and emails over the last week, it knows where it's searching because of that index. If you're used to any data platforms, very similar context and concept of indexing. So providing and querying the semantic index for data. For people, it's using the Microsoft Graph. For data and information, it's using the semantic index to pull back data. And that index is consistently running to optimize the responses that Copilot is giving. It's worth bearing in mind that it's based on keyword matching. So naming files correctly, everything along those lines, really, really key. It will pick up on keywords in files and as titles of files as well. Now, as an administrator, using Purview is the best way to prevent users having access to information that they shouldn't. Another way, for example, if you have an accountancy or financial SharePoint Online site, you can actually exclude, as a site administrator, Microsoft 365 Copilot from being able to index that data. And as such, it will not be available. It won't be contextually aware of that data within your prompt information. Otherwise, it's pretty good at searching. So within Copilot, you can have any search, web search, and plugin search. Talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot for security and any extensibility is an entirely different conversation, which we can absolutely have. But to show you some really, really neat demos, I'm going to hand over to Matt to talk about the Power Platform.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. I'm going to share my screen and we'll talk about Power Platform. Okay, so welcome to this webinar. I'm Matt Harding, so I'm the Power Platform lead here at Ingentive. I've been working with Microsoft technology a little over 20 years in total. More recently, kind of SharePoint Online, Microsoft 365, and much more recently than that, the Power Platform and delivering solutions in the Power Platform. So we're going to be talking about the Copilot options within Power Platform today, which has got a slightly different angle to perhaps some of the other tools, in that we have some capability of creating and customizing experiences in Power Platform. Let's just move the slide on. So Power Platform, for those who don't know or don't necessarily understand exactly what it's all about, is really about creating and extending digital experiences. So we're all aware of what Office 365 and Microsoft 365 does as its core focus. Provides you with tools for running your business and for doing your work, really. So things like Teams and Planner and SharePoint and Outlook and all these things that we use every day. Power Platform's really there to join those things together and to build solutions that use those components. So if we want to automate the creation of planner tasks, or we want to use Teams as a way of generating notifications, or we want to do approvals in SharePoint, that kind of thing. So it's an engine for achieving those kinds of things. And perhaps actually you need to build something which doesn't exist at all and you want to build something from scratch. So we can do that as well using Power Apps and supplement those with the different areas such as Power BI and Power Automate. Recently, we've got the introduction of Copilot Studio as well, which is where we can actually build our own Copilot experiences that we can use within the applications and the solutions that we build within the Power Platform. So we're going to do some demos on that today. We're going to talk in a second about some other areas around Power Platform, exactly what it's all about. Power Platform is a bit different to the other areas that we've seen, in that we really have the sort of the concept of two types of users with Power Platform. We've got people consuming Power Platform options and Power Platform applications. If your business builds, for example, a expenses application or a leave booking application or something like that, you've got people who are using those apps, and we want to be able to provide them with Copilot controls and Copilot functionality within those digital experiences, so that people are making the most of things, not just within the out-of-the-box applications that we've seen demoed by Andy and Tom, also within your custom solutions. It's important that they have access to the generative capabilities within custom solutions too. Then us as makers, if you've got a development team or people who are building solutions within your organization, then they also have their own tools. So the Power Platform tools can build apps and can build flows and can build other components actually using Copilot too. So we're going to do most of what I'm going to show today is going to be live demos, which is brave, but I think we're going to be good on that front, and you'll get a lot of value out of understanding things from a live demo perspective. So with that, let's move into the demo section. So we've got 3 demos to go through today. We're going to go about building an application using Copilot. Then we're going to look at Copilot Studio in a little bit of detail, and then finally we're going to look at the what I think is the most interesting and exciting thing for me is the Copilot control for Canvas apps. So we are in the Maker Studio here, the Power Apps Maker Studio, where we begin our app making journey, and you can see we have a Copilot prompt box at the top for us to enter something into. So I'm just going to grab hold of a prompt that I pre-created, and we're going to pop that into there. So I'm asking it to make me an app that tracks household tasks. Now, I've gone against Tom's advice here, and I've gone for a really simple prompt. I haven't asked it to do very much other than build me a simple app. I've mentioned household tasks, so I'm going to click on the go button, and then we're going to see what it's going to do. So the first thing that Power Apps is going to do is going to take my prompt and it's going to design me a database in the background for storing those household tasks, because all of the applications that we build need some kind of data store. They're all built off of tables like other applications. So it's done a pretty decent job. It's come up with a data source for me here. It's even put in some dummy items. We've got 5 items there of household tasks you might want to do. We've got some assignments, we've got some due dates, and we've got some statuses. So actually not a bad stab at that initial prompt. So I want to add one more thing to it. So I obviously got the Copilot prompt here on the right ready to go. So I'm going to paste in a prompt asking it to add a new field called task details. So I want something slightly more detailed than just the task name. So we've asked it to do that, and sure enough, there at the right hand side of the table, we've now got some task details, and it's got some nice Lorem some dummy text in there, which is going to be really handy for when we actually create the application. So I'm happy with the way that that's been built. That's going to be good enough for what I need it for. Over here, we've got some suggestions that we can use, some prompt suggestions, which is good. That's very user friendly. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to create the app. It's going to take probably 20 to 30 seconds for that. So we're doing a live demo, so there'll be a slight delay while this is generating the application. What that's going to do is going to take that table that we've said is okay. It's going to build out the screens that we need for adding new records, editing existing records, and searching for records that exist already. So a few more seconds while that finishes compiling. And what we'll have at the end of this is something we can, if we're happy with it, we can save it and publish it immediately to users. If we want to make a few tweaks to it, then obviously we're in the studio, so we can make some changes to the application before we send it out. So there we go. We've still got the Copilot editor on the right hand side, so we can ask it some questions, we can ask it to do some extra things, but actually it's generated what's not particularly bad looking app. We've got some nice panels, and if we go to the preview of the app here, we can see here that we can jump into a new experience here to add a new task, and we can click on existing tasks and modify them, and we can search for tasks as well. I think we've got Mary's got a couple of tasks there, for example. So it did a fairly decent job of putting together a simple application. It will have built that out in a single screen, and we can then go in and modify this, for example. So we can come in here and we can change these things around and modify them if we want to, change the colors, change the headings. But actually, for a few clicks and for a few simple prompts, it's done a fairly good job of building me an application that would probably have taken me several hours at least to have got to the point of building that out. There might be a few things I'd want to move around to make it look a little bit better, but it's all plumbed in, it's all working, the search is working, the new and the deletion, etc. is all working. So that's just a short example of building the application from scratch using Copilot. The next thing I want to have a look at on this demo is looking at Copilot Studio. So Copilot Studio is the new name for what was Power Virtual Agents, because Copilot kind of takes over from Power Virtual Agents, whereas Power Virtual Agents was quite formulaic in what it would do and how it would respond to you. Obviously, with generative responses, it's much more natural and powerful. So on this simple Copilot Studio demo here, I'm just going to give it a website, and then we're going to ask questions of that website. So I'm going to give it our own website, the ingentive.com. I'm going to start a chat with that website. So it's going to connect to that website, and it's going to begin having a communication. So literally I've just plugged to the website, pressed a button, and I'm ready to go. So I can ask a question here. What does Ingentive do? And that's going to then query that website for me and come back with an answer. There we go. So it's to provide digital solutions and services, and we specialized in Microsoft technology, and it's providing me with some nice links and some areas to go and explore if I want to do that. So these are really simple and really powerful, low effort to create, so we can build these into our solutions as well, so that people are querying sources. And I think, as Andy or Tom mentioned, that source could be public, as in public website, or it could be curated company information like SharePoint content and internal content to the business, where there might be more specific and secure content that you want to discuss. So really simple. We can create a generative chat experience with content in a really simple kind of fashion at that point. So the final demo for this session is around what I think is the most interesting use case, which is around the Copilot control, which is very new and really shiny to Canvas apps. So this is a Canvas app example here that I've built and created for this session. We have got a data source in here, which is called lexicon entries, which is a Dataverse table we built in the background, and we've got an example of what that data looks like here in the gallery at the right. So it's just storing some lookup information and some definitions of what those values mean. So we can ask some questions using the Copilot control here. So if I come back out of the preview, you can see this is a control that I've added to the screen. I can drag and drop it around and it'll change shape. It can be merged into whatever space I've got within my app to control it. If I look at my tree view, you can see here it's a chat component, and I can interact with some of the properties of it over here, such as the height and the size and the data source, etc., and some additional properties. So let's have a look at how it behaves. And bear in mind, we can build these into any custom applications then to give people generative question and answer capabilities to any custom solution. So the first thing I'm going to ask it here is going to be, what is an ERD? So that's going to query my data source, which is a Dataverse table, and that's going to come back with an answer for what an ERD is. So it stands for Entity Relationship Diagram, which is a way to show tables and relationships in a clear way. Okay, that's good. So let's query that. That's done a good job. Now I'm going to throw it a bit of a curveball, because I've actually got two entries for HLD in here. One is a medical thing, and one is the high-level design. So let's see if we can confuse it by asking it what is an HLD. So it's smart enough to know that there's two things in there, and it comes back and says it's high-level design, or that word I'm not going to try and say. So it's been smart enough to know that it's one of both of those things. So I could dig deeper down into what it can do. So I'll ask it a couple of other questions. What does JML do? So JML stands for joiners, movers, and leavers. It's an Ingentive application that helps you manage your onboarding and offboarding. So I've asked it a question of this item here. So I've asked it what it does. So it's interpreted my question, and rather than just giving me back exactly what it's typed there, it's interpreted that and given me the response. So good example of how we could use this. We can build your content. It could be a lot of text content, things like policies and help information, knowledge bases, that kind of thing. And then with a really simple interface, you can just provide point the control at the Dataverse table with the content in it, and you can have those generative conversations with that content with no problems at all. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice slightly. So that's an interesting one, particularly for me as I'm building custom solutions a lot using Canvas apps. So the ability to be able to create a page or a screen that has a Copilot control in it that enables me to have that conversational interaction with the data is going to be really powerful. It's going to move these solutions on to quite a high level. So let's just flip back to the presentation for a second and just recap on what we've just gone through in those 3 demos. So the first demo, we looked at consuming Copilot as an app maker. So I wanted to build me an app, and I did that by just entering some simple prompts, and it built me a custom app I could have distributed to my organization. That could be for expenses, for annual leave, that kind of thing. The second demo, we went through the generative answers in Copilot Studio using the ingentive.com website. And then we wrapped up by looking at the Copilot Canvas app control, which is very new and in preview, but I think it's really exciting for being able to create custom interfaces that allow us to have that conversational experience around content and data. So that's really me wrapped on the Power Platform updates. So with that, I shall hand you back to Natalie for the final piece.
Thanks, Matthew. And thanks to all the team for taking us through that. I do appreciate that has been a lot of content to cover in the time that we've covered it off. So thank you very much for your patience with that. And we will send out some next steps and some summaries of what the team have covered as well, so that you've got that to hand. In terms of what it means for you and what you can do to get started with Copilot, there are a couple of things that we have in hand. As a Copilot launch partner, we do have access to some Microsoft funding that's available potentially for your organisation. So that comes in 2 flavours. We've either got the 365 workshop, of course, where we can talk about the art of the possible with Copilot. We can talk you through, like the team has demonstrated today, some of the use cases, but more importantly, make it very specific to your business. So what can you get from Copilot, improve the most value? And that can be a day long that you take with you and your key stakeholders in the business to figure out exactly what your strategy would be for Copilot and how you would get your ROI and what impact it would have in your organisation. Like the team have mentioned throughout each of their presentations, adoption is key for this new technology. So the other offering that we have, which is funded by Microsoft, is an adoption accelerator. And again, that will take you through that deep dive of personas within your business, how Copilot can be applied to each of those personas, and then again, how you can realise its value across your organisation in a short time frame with a change and adoption programme, of which we have a specialist team in-house here at Ingentive who are ProSci qualified and follow that methodology. So those are 2 funding pots which Microsoft have made available. Please do get in touch if that is something which you think would be relevant to your organisation, and we can certainly check to see if that is funding that would be available to you. The other thing that we've put together, and I say the royal we, it's definitely the team who have presented here today, is our own Copilot Accelerator. And that touches on what we talked about at the start of this session. So that is really focusing in on your strategy, your governance, and your adoption. Effectively, we're going to take you from 0 to fully implementing Copilot in your organisation in under 45 days. The engagement itself is around 10 to 12 days, and that will be made up of focusing on a number of different workshops, which then have the output of you having your adoption plan, having your governance and your strategy in place, and being able to effectively adopt Copilot within your organisation in a way that's suited to your size, your vertical, and the outputs that you want to achieve. So again, if that is of interest to you, then please get in touch and let us know. We can give you more information about these programmes. We will also send some takeaways as well following the session so that you have all of that information. I think that really is us at the end of the session. We have left some time at the end, so I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to the Q&A function. You'll see it just at the top of your screen here. But if you want to stick around, the team are going to be on hand here anyway. So please do feel free to ask questions within that Q&A, and then we can answer those questions for you while the team are here. If there's nothing else, then we'll let you go on that, and we'll be in touch very shortly with some of those follow-ups. But like I say, we will be here and available for any questions that you want to ask of the team. Thanks again for your time, and it was good to have you join us today.